MiniWarGaming's Reanimation Protocols.
Matthew here from MiniWarGaming.com with
Steve. Hey guys.
And welcome to our next episode in our series of our first impressions on the new Necron Codex. Oh yeah. And in this next few videos, we're going to be talking about the changes, some of the changes to the models and units in the Necron Codex. We're not going to go over every detail because that would take a very long time. And let's face it, we haven't played with them yet.
Right.
And so that's really what we're going to know. So right now, I just want to go over what we see to be the changes and what we think, theoretically, that will mean for the Necrons. And then we'll test those out in battle reports. And so there are 6 slots in the Force Org: HQ, Elite, Troops, Fast Attack, Heavy Support, and Lords of War. And so we're going to break this up into 6 videos covering each of those. We're not going to, like I said, we're not going to necessarily cover everything in each of them, especially with the HQs. We're not going to be covering all the special characters, even though there are some major changes there, just because we don't have time and we want to cover the really important stuff.
Yeah.
So today's video is going to be about HQ choices, and then in the video description below, there is a link to the next episode where we will cover the Elite choices. And that will be in the MiniWarGaming Vault. And if you are a Vault member, you can just go ahead and watch that once you're done watching this one. If you're not a Vault member, you can still click the link and get a free 7-day trial, which all these videos will be done within 7 days. Like, we're putting them all out at once because the Necron Codex isn't getting any newer. And so you can watch them all and then just cancel your subscription if you don't want to keep your Vault membership. But I think you'll want to keep it because it's pretty awesome. And it helps support us. It helps make these videos as well. So thank you very much if you are a Vault member, of course. So let's go through it. We're going to talk about the 4 main HQ choices today in this video: Overlord, Lord, Cryptek, and the Destroyer Lord.
If you notice what you just said, 2 guys just became lords.
Yeah.
Cryptek and the Lord are now actual.
They're actually HQ choices.
slots. Yeah.
Yeah, the Royal Court, as we knew it, is gone.
Yep.
Totally. And we're going to talk about the Crypteks and how much they've changed, but it's just fundamentally changed. Hugely. There's still a formation called the Royal Court, but it's not the same thing.
It's not. No.
So let's go through each of them. Let's start with the Overlord. What are the major changes from the old Overlord to the new Overlord?
And I think the best is weapon skill with skill 5.
Yes.
Weapon skill with skill 4. Okay, blitz skill, fine. Weapon skill 4, always hitting everything on 4s before.
Pretty much.
Was really frustrating.
Pretty much, yeah. Except against things that it didn't matter. And you're
Right.
them, like Termagants. And you're like, yay, I get to hit on 3s. Or Tau, I get to hit on 3s.
You're overkill with your war side. But now you can reliably kill a Marine.
Yeah, you're hitting on 3s. So that's nice. Other than that, what else has changed with them?
He's very similar to what he was before, other than the change of the. What is gone is there's no more 2+ save, 3+ vulnerable save with the Overlord. That's gone because the war gear stuff is all changed.
Yeah,
it's now called Knum. And you know what? This actually might work out for Income's favor, but we'll find out in some who wins to see who we can still stand up to. But well, a lot of equipment changed. The Gauntlet of Fire, no longer a melee weapon. It's actually a ranged weapon.
It's just a flamer.
It's a flamer.
Just
So
a regular
you
flamer.
can get flamers on a handful of characters now, and still get your war scythe, which is great. The phase shifter is no longer a 3+ invulnerable. It's a 4+.
That's a big change.
It's a big change, but
Yeah.
kind of balanced, kind of expected. They didn't really.
Yeah, it was expensive before, though.
It was 45 points.
45
previously.
points, so for a 3-up invul.
It's almost half, I think, now.
Yeah, and so when you looked at it, when your Overlord cost 90 points, and then you had to add 45 points to give him a 3-up invul. For me,
You never gave it to him.
That wasn't an auto include, and so making it cheaper and giving a 4-up save, that might be something that you see more often. On top of that, the Overlords are now a little bit cheaper, so that makes them even more of a utility.
A little bit cheaper.
Yeah.
Because of the changes to reanimation protocols, the phylactery no longer is when you die, you get back up and get D3 wounds. It now just gives you.
It will not die.
It will not die. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, okay,
That's okay.
that's not bad.
If you don't forget to roll it.
Yeah, it's actually one more die you can roll on your lord to get rid of that one wound or whatever.
Yeah, it might come into play. It's just, and it seems that overall they've gotten cheaper, and there's not as much that you're going to do with them. But then you have the artifacts thrown in there and the new Warlord traits, and that's kind of what'll give them some of their uniqueness. Because now you can have that one guy with the Void Reaper. You can have that one guy with the Veil of Darkness on an Overlord. So that's,
You can get both.
Yeah, no, I know.
Oh, yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
you can only have one of each
Right.
in the entire army.
Yeah, the only way to still get your 2+ save, which was, I think, really cheap before, was it 10 points before? Maybe
20,
15?
yeah, I can't remember.
It was really cheap before. Now you have to pay for the what's it called?
The Night Shroud, Nightmare Shroud.
Something like that, where it's pretty hefty in points. It gives you fear and the 2+ save, and you can cause a unit within 18 to take a morale test.
That's right.
That's the only way to get now a 2+ save in your army. You only get one of them.
Yeah. So, although before, would you really bring? Maybe you brought 2 overlords, so
Well,
it's not too big a deal.
I think one of the changes happened to the regular lords is they got two wounds now instead of 1.
Yes.
Now, if you can still get all those 2+ saves on those 2 wound guys, I might have paid for all those Sempiternal Weaves.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It makes them a little more survivable. So let's talk about the Lord. I think we've covered the Overlord enough. The Lord, for me, the big change is the fact that you can bring him as an HQ choice.
Yeah.
And so he's a cheap. It's nice to always have access to a super cheap HQ choice.
Unit, very cheap unit.
Because if all of a sudden you want to bring a combined arms detachment, for example, or even with the Decurion detachment, where all of a sudden if you want to bring a Royal Court, you have to bring a second Overlord to bring any of them. The fact that you can, well, I guess this is a bad example because you have to bring an Overlord for that. So let's go back. Combined arms detachment or allied detachment for Necrons. Now your HQ tax, if you want to call it that, if you're really not interested in that slot, it could just be a 50-point model.
Which is his stats are exactly the same as they were before, but plus 1 wound.
1 extra wound. So,
I mean, he's not a bad guy.
And he's basically a light Overlord. If you want to compare it to Space Marines, Overlords are like your captains and the Lords are like your commanders, or chapter masters to captains, however you want to look at it. But essentially, that they're just a light one, and so they're cheaper, and they can still do pretty much everything the Overlord does. In fact, they can do exactly everything the Overlord does.
For the 30-point difference, you get +1 weapon skill, bliss skill, and wound. Maybe it's
and attack.
And attack?
Yeah. Go from 2 to 3 attacks.
Ooh,
Is it worth it? Of course,
points?
of course it's worth it.
Yeah.
But you have to realize that if we're thinking in general, yeah, it's going to be worth it. You have to look at a specific situation. What if you just, the only role of your HQ choice is to sit back with a unit of shooting guys? With a Staff of Light, do you care if he has a ballistic skill 5 instead of 4?
No, I guess not.
Not usually. And so he sits back. Who cares that he's got 1 less wound and 1 less attack because he's not going to see much combat. And so all of a sudden, and you could stick him with a Resurrection Orb, a Veil of Darkness, whatever, because they can take all of that now.
That's true, Veil of Darkness, yeah.
And so you can drop that 30 points, which might not sound like a lot, but it could allow you to fit in something else if you're not going to be using them. And that's the thing that a lot of like HQ, the prerequisite slots, the troop choices, you don't get this as much because troop choices are typically cheap and durable and just good. But with your HQ slots, sometimes you're paying a lot of points for something you barely use. And you don't really have much of a choice. Like I think of Tyranids, and they don't really have a cheap HQ choice. A Tyranid Prime is their cheapest one, and that's like, I think it starts at 90 or 100 points. And so you can't, and you're spending so many points elsewhere, and then this guy doesn't do anything. It's just nice to have the option.
I will say, over the weekend, I have made a handful, just written down a handful of lists. And it was always the Overlord was taking in more points than I wanted him to. So, like, yes, he can do some stuff in combat, but there's a lot of really great things in the Codex. Maybe I do only want to spend 50 points on a Lord, get to 25 points elsewhere, 30 points elsewhere. So yeah, it's definitely going to be. I actually probably will be using him.
And on top of that, if you're going back to the whole combined arms detachment versus Decurion detachment, all of a sudden, if you really are playing tactical objectives and you want that objective secured, you pay this dirt cheap points cost for a Lord, maybe give a Resurrection Orb, and then you're able to spam a lot more troop choices. And let's face it, Necron troop choices are quite powerful.
They're not bad.
Which we're going to talk about in a couple of videos, so we're not going to really cover that here. But just the fact that allows you to just focus on what you wanted to bring, then that can make a huge difference in what your army is going to do. So I think that's where his usefulness will come in.
I am going to miss the just cheap Lord attachment to my units to give the Mind Shackle Scarab challenge and the Resurrection Orb.
Yeah, because they were like 35 points before, weren't they?
Right. They were exactly 35 points.
Yeah, 35 points.
Didn't have to pay for
25 for a Cryptek.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a naked Cryptek without any of the upgrades.
Which actually most of them weren't that expensive.
Yeah, but still, I'm just saying you had to take it in.
But no, I mean, the way it went, it's actually simpler.
Yeah.
I like it. It's okay.
Well, let's talk about the Cryptek. Huge.
He's
huge.
Cryptek's
humongous.
There's a new Lord choice, and they call it a Cryptek.
And the old Cryptek, it's just there's a shadow of the Cryptek in this codex. Because the old
models there.
okay, like here's the old codex right here. Okay, I got it. I'm sitting here for a reference, and the old Cryptek had 2 pages. Yeah, 2 pages of how to make a Cryptek. And you had so many cool things. Now, mind you, like they're not all useful. You saw a lot of Harbingers of Destruction with their Eldritch
They
Lances.
could get basically Eldritch Lances were basically las cannons.
Yeah, strength 8 AP2, 36-inch range.
It's an assault weapon.
Yeah, it's an assault weapon, which who cares? You're Necrons.
Yeah.
You got cool stuff like Veil of Darkness, which work differently.
I got
but
one with haywire shots, assault 4 haywire shots.
that could stop
There
people
was-
from deep striking
There
nearby.
was different Crypteks you could make that were actually could do different jobs, different roles, and did them very well.
And it's not just a question of whether they were useful or not, because some of them weren't. It's more just that they totally removed it
Yeah, just
and replaced it with a
without designing.
65-point Cryptek who has his ability is to give everybody in a squad +1 reanimations.
yeah,
And that's cool, except that your Decurion Detachment already does that.
65 points. And we'll just point out you can never get better than a 4+ reanimation anyway.
Right, so it doesn't
So
stack,
it
really.
doesn't work well with the Decurion formation.
Except for instant death things, because then
Then,
it brings
yeah.
out a 3+ back up to 4+, so
True.
that's okay. But that's
But
very
65
situational.
points just seems like it's too. I don't think I would pay. Now, good theory here. Never tried it. Don't know yet. I just don't see the upfront value to him right now because the Decurion formation is good enough. It's very good.
Maybe we're going to find the Decurion Detachment very restrictive, and we'll be playing a lot more with combined arms, in which case you might see Cryptex more. But the fact that they take up an HQ choice all of a sudden becomes an issue because
Right.
you're going to want maybe something else, because they just don't fill much of a role in other things that they're doing. So I just don't see them
Well,
really.
and again, as you talked about with the cheap Lord with a Resurrection Orb to a unit, the Cryptek's a little bit cheaper than that. A Lord with a Resurrection Orb. You won't get the reroll, but you'll get the +1.
That could help.
It
+1 is probably
could be
better
another-
than. Oh, I think the reroll is a
don't
little
know.
better.
Probably, I don't know. Yeah.
It's a
so,
little bit because it's 25%.
as of
It's
right
33, yeah.
now, I don't see the value to the Cryptek.
Me neither.
But we'll see. We'll try them.
Yeah, we'll see. Which brings us to our last one. We failed to mention this one before because I forgot about it, to be honest, is the Catacomb Command Barge. Now, this is different because chariots used to be transports for your Overlord.
Right.
And now they're not. They kind of are, but they're not.
They're not.
They're just this weird thing in 40K and 7th edition. So what do you think about the new Catacomb Command Barge? What do you see as the major changes from the old one to the new one?
You know what? Well, Command Wave, I think to me is his command range is 18 inches now, allowing you to, I think, re-roll. Oh, no,
Reroll.
it's 12. So within 12 of him, you just re-roll your
Morale.
and pinning test, which
And
is
fear.
okay. Leadership 10, probably not going to fail anyway. It does stack with the one Warlord trait.
Well, remember though, close combat, you're not always going to be leadership 10.
Fair enough.
So
Fair
re-rolling.
enough. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's a banner from fantasy, right? Just give everything better combat results.
I think where he really synergizes is, I made a list, or I wanted everybody to be super mobile and shooty. He fit in with that list to be the commander because, well, I'll have to get to this later on, but there's some issues with characters getting inside the
Ghost Arcs.
Ghost Arcs now, yeah. So to keep up, I had to put him in a chariot. Actually, when I finished writing that list, I liked it. I thought he did pretty good in it. I don't know if anything really major changed to them.
The only thing that majorly changed to the Catacomb Command Barge already changed, and that's 7th edition.
Right, exactly. Which
So that was
changed for
already
the better.
Yeah, there was a lot of good changes. You couldn't. The one thing I don't like is that you can't leave it, but as a change there. So, but other than that, it's fine.
With the phylactery, which now gives you feel no pain, or sorry, will not die, it also affects the chariot. So I think that's your obvious choice when you get if an Overlord with the phylactery on the chariot, if you get the chariot.
Yeah, exactly.
That was all kinds of stuttering.
Yeah, so that's the Catacomb Command Barge. So it's a good choice. Expensive maybe a little bit compared to the other choices you have, but for what it can do, all the
I
special
like
rules
it.
for chariots, I think it could be
Yeah.
worth it. Lastly, we have the Destroyer Lord. So we've had some changes there. What do you think is the biggest change?
Last and certainly the least, he's no longer jump, he's jetpack. Other than that, I think his stats are. Oh, he no longer comes with the War Scythe as well. He's a little bit cheaper, but doesn't come with the War Scythe, and he's jetpack. Like all destroyers are jetpack now. He just doesn't fit in anything or his previous
Except
role.
destroyers.
Yeah, like you can't.
And because before you could, because he still has preferred enemy, so he'd stick him with a group of raids, he could keep up with them, gave him preferred enemy, and great. Now he can't.
Maybe in a squad of Lich Guard to give them preferred enemy, but
or in a squad of warriors or mortals to give them preferred enemy. But he could do that before.
That's his only role. Like I don't know if you want to pay that many points.
110 points to upgrade a squad of preferred enemy, with a few extra shots because he's got a staff of light by default.
I think the only thing you would try him in would just be the Lich Guard because they move slow. He moves slow. He's not getting his thrust move, but he has to stay with the unit. Everybody else, he's wasted sitting back doing nothing. At least he can get into combat with the Lich Guard.
Well, here's a what if. How many warriors in Fitness Squad? I know it's minimum
20.
10. Is it just 20?
It's 20.
So if you had a squad of 20 warriors, is it worth 110 points to give them preferred enemy?
I don't think so because warriors are that expensive. I'd rather have another 10 more warriors.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. That's always the question, right?
Yeah. Is the
Do you
reroll
give
better
rerolls?
or more bodies?
Yeah, and it's usually more bodies. Like, I would rather have 2 weapons than twin linked any day.
Sure.
Because
Of
2
course.
weapons have the potential to do more damage than a twin linked
Okay.
one.
When I went through this first time, I said, Destroyer Lord, no. Forget it. There's no point. Until we start talking just now, as I said, maybe with Lich Guard, that's when it first occurred to me. Maybe with the Lich Guard.
Give Lich Guard
Because
preferred enemy.
he's very bulky. He can fit inside a Night Scythe, because it holds 15 still. He can't fit inside a Night Scythe with 10 of them.
Yeah.
I actually might try that. I'm going to try that, actually.
Yeah, because Lich Guard are expensive.
They are.
And so 110 points to give them preferred enemy might be worth it.
Yeah.
Especially because he could take a Resurrection Orb.
Yes, he can.
Because he could take all of the Techno Arcana
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, there's another Techno Arcana thing, gives him a Strength 7 AP2 one-use Flamer. He might get that and jump in with them. I'm probably going to try him with Lich Guard.
I guess
what that's the only thing.
What you could look at it as, because his weapon skill and ballistic skill are the same as a Lord, his number of wounds and attacks is the same as an Overlord, so he's somewhere in between the two. So 50 points to 80 points, so let's call him like equivalent to a 70-point Overlord. And so you're paying 40 points for preferred enemy. That's essentially, you could always do that. You could say, well, if he replaces the Overlord or Lord, or Overlord specifically, in a combined arms attachment, not to Kyrian, because you can't do that with the Kyrian, then you're only paying 40 points, because you're going to have to bring an HQ choice anyways. Maybe we're going to bring an Overlord with Resurrection Orb and Staff and War Scythe, so you make a Destroyer Lord with Resurrection Orb and War Scythe, and you're essentially just paying 40 points for preferred enemy.
And Toughness 6.
Oh, and you get the Toughness 6 on top of that.
And if you really need to, you can ditch the unit and thrust and move faster to get an objective.
Yeah.
There's
so
that.
I think he does have some merit.
I think
But
for everything
think
that
it's-
we said he can do, we might find that it just might not worth the points.
Maybe. That's the hard part, because if we were talking about adding a Resurrection Orb and a War Scythe, that 110 becomes 140 or something like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it gets expensive.
150. But then if you were bringing, like my point is, if you were already bringing an Overlord with that stuff, then you're really just paying 40 more points to add in the preferred enemy.
Right.
And the ability to have that jetpack and the
And
toughness
as
6.
I said, though, when I was making my list, it was always the HQ slots were getting cut down for me.
Yeah.
So I want to keep that probably as little as possible. This is, I
It's
guess.
just a jetpack thing. If it was still jump,
Why?
if it was still jump, totally still fine, because then he could keep up
He
with
could go with the Wraiths
Wraiths.
where I want him, or the Praetorians. Like,
or the Praetorians.
you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
giving Praetorians
For sure.
preferred enemy would be awesome. But and I guess he could still do it. He's going to slow them down. That's all. So overall, that's the HQ choices that we want to talk about. There's all the special characters. There's a lot of special characters, so that would take too much time, and I want to get some games in with them before we can really talk about them. So what do you think? What do you think are the best and the worst HQ choices? Which ones do you think will work in your armies? Or maybe you've played games by now with the new Necrons. Which ones have worked for you? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, click the link in the video description to go watch our video about the elite choices for the Necrons. It is in the MiniWarGaming Vault, so click it, and happy wargaming.